just to get started, let's show my screen. So the weather forecast that I just saw today, 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, is looking pretty good for us. I like it. I'd rather be warm than cold. I don't know. We'll have to ask for the bees or about the bees.
We need some rain. We need some rain. So dry.
So Becky's one of our officers on our panel this evening. She'll help answer questions. Cheryl Burkhead, our editor. I saw her on. Our newly elected Fun Day Special Events Coordinator, Jay Francis. I saw that he was on. And myself, I'll try to direct the questions, and we'll see what we can do to find answers for you. But that's all the officers that I've seen this evening. So feel free to jump in. But I've got a lot more questions than usual. Not too many, but better than the past couple months that we've had. So to get to those, if nobody minds, this came from John Schoenfeld. And I'm sorry if this screen might change. I'll try not to touch anything. I've got a different computer and I still haven't gotten used to it. But his inquiry was, he says, I inspected his hives this past Sunday, my hives. There is a strong population of bees. Most are in the top brood box. There are full frames of honey in the bottom brood box. And his question is, do you ever switch locations of the boxes before spring if they run low on honey? And between Becky and Cheryl, does anybody want to jump in with that, an answer or a direction for John?
Did he say all his bees and brood were in the top box? Not brood, but his bees. And all the
yes, most are in the top box.
All the bottom box full of honey.
Yes.
I'd be tempted to reverse them.
But I'd wait until a warm day, right?
Yeah, a warm day. Are we going to be in the 60s by Friday or 70s?
Yes.
That's when I do it. Thursday, I think even Thursday was supposed to be.
Even Thursday or Friday. There. It's kind of hard. I mean, I really haven't done a lot of recent inspections, so I don't do very much this time of year. But I think Cheryl's been in a few.
I don't either, but yeah, I would reverse them. We usually don't have the weather that allows us to get in colonies this time of year. So
we are in La Nina, and that's the situation we have this year. And what that's doing is that's creating, La Nina is a cooler than average Pacific area off the coast. And that's causing a high pressure ridge to generally stay in the northwest. Anyway, it's preventing lows from dipping down further south than they normally would where we are. So that's why we're having warmer temperatures. There are some years.
Did he really say that the food was in the bottom?
Yes, that was in his email.
Okay.
So there are full frames of honey in the bottom brood box. It's normal to have frames of honey over to the sides, but not necessarily in the middle. So just to clarify, John, if you're on, if you're able to, you're welcome to chime in. But yeah, Jolie, he said there are frames of honey in the bottom brood box. And do you ever switch locations of the boxes before spring? And if you mean officially spring, which isn't until the middle of March, there is something that sometimes some beekeepers do where they reverse brood boxes, but they don't break the cluster. So if your cluster is all in the top box, or the bottom box and you reverse, it's okay, but it's not okay to break the cluster. In case we didn't say that. So I hope that may have answered it. Or maybe not. Anybody want to chime in? Jolie? Okay.
I think that leads to another interesting question, though, this time of year, is that if we continue with this weather pattern, what does that do to our long-term food storage? And that when we have these real weather anomalies, we just need to be more aware and to pay attention to our bees. And maybe you've never had to add supplemental feed, but this might be the year that they're going to go through everything and you may need to. The caution that you gave about don't break that brood cluster, that can happen any day. If you have big wild wind or temperature swings, your cluster may break and then they don't get to recluster like they're supposed to. So pay attention to that, but watching those food stores and making sure that they have ample food is really kind of your job in the winter. So with our weird weather, you got to pay attention. That would, and I'd probably reverse it too if it really was my top is where the bees are, the bottom is full of food, or at least move some frames around.
Move some frames. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then we got an inquiry from David Potroff. Sorry. I'm going to get my old computer out and go back to it. David is from Horton High School. I believe he might be an instructor there. And they are just getting started. So he's saying, we're just starting out, so our questions are very basic. They plan on being a part of the Q&A, but they want to send them to us in case something came up. So they had several questions. I think since they're just getting started, and they also signed up for a B class, at least David did. It's got several questions, but there are two on this frame. The first one is, what is the best brand of quality bee equipment and suits? And what is required for equipment and tools that they need to make sure that they have? And then there are some more questions on another frame. But Becky, I think this kind of leads into our new beekeeping class subject.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. We're January. Oh, now I've lost the date. 28th, 29th.
29th.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. New B class this year. And last year we didn't get to meet because of COVID, but we're going to meet in person this year. I hope that the new variant doesn't play heck with that and make us all sorry that we're going to meet in person. So take precautions, be safe for yourself, but we are going to try to meet Douglas County Fairgrounds, Building 21, and it'll be a full day event, including food and snacks and notes and everything. But we're meeting in January because we'll want to talk about these kinds of things. I don't know that anyone will say that one brand of bee suit is better than the other, but there are varieties to choose from, and it depends on whether you want to be really cool because you can't stand overheating or whether you want to be really protected. And so you kind of have to figure out what is your level of concern. Equipment. We have a couple of big suppliers in the United States, Dadant, Man Lake. There's a lap bee supply, blue sky bee supply. Buying from a major supplier is really important. Does that mean you have to order online? No, because there are several people in the kind of Northeast Kansas area that are distributors for these big companies. And so you can go, you can look at your equipment and you can pick out what you want. But that and how to construct equipment, all of that will be talked about at this class. And it's a long discussion and there are a lot of variables, but I think that our people do a really good job of talking about it. These are all going to be, all our speakers are local people. We are people at the club, people that you can talk to over and over again. So I'm really excited about that. It's a great opportunity to get to know us and get involved and see what we're all about.
And I believe part of that information will be included in the notebook that you'll be getting with the class.
Yep. You are right.
So there's some work coming up for us to get. So
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
These were his other questions. So there were a total of 7, but he's asking, what's the best type of bees for beginners? I'm sure we'll be going over. So we'll answer some of these from the class. Sorry, this is not staying. It's a matter of opinion, and we all have different opinions. And so you can ask Becky in the class. You can ask me, Cheryl. Sorry, I'm sorry this isn't staying. I've got to should go through this beforehand. Yikes.
Robert,
Okay.
this is so refreshing that you're having computer issues. That's all. I am so thrilled.
Just leave it on that screen, Robert. We can see it that way.
Okay. So we'll get you that information. You know, if I said I would just be giving you an opinion if I had told you to buy from this particular dealer. I can give you my reasons why, but you know, let's do that in person. So I'm not being recorded forever. What are things we should consider when planning a location for our hives? That's going to be covered in our class. So if you can wait.
But really, if you call one of us,
we'll tell
one
you.
of us would come out and walk the property with you or something too. So feel free to reach out to some of us because like we'd be happy to do that. So
great idea.
That and we also, I think it's on our website, have a list of resources. We update that every year. We look at it for sites that aren't working correctly, but it is trusted websites, it's trusted books, it's ways to get good, solid information. Everyone knows that there is a plethora of information on YouTube, and unfortunately, a lot of it's just not good for Kansas. So there are lots of places you can go for resources, and I hope that a lot of you will choose come to the class. If you've had bees for probably less than 5 years, either one of these classes would be appropriate for you to. I've never been to a class that I didn't learn something, and I can give you specific examples from this last week that we heard something online that was like, it was a Zoom class, and man, it was good. Anyway, I think you would learn something. I think you should consider joining us if you've got the time and can do it. And Lord knows the price is right. So I hope you'll join us. And I hope that with these questions, these are all excellent questions, and every one of them will be addressed in the newbie class.
And so here's the advertisement we have so far for the beginning bee class. January 29th, Douglas County Fairgrounds in Lawrence. I believe it'll be starting somewhere around 9 o'clock in the morning and going until 5. So this will be the last Saturday of the month. There's more information on the website of the actual class topics. So,
does anybody have a question about the class? Happy either one. I'm happy to talk about that, obviously. Okay, well, if you think of something, speak up. Glad to help.
Or put it in the chat, either way.
We've got it.
So Cheryl Burkhead, she sent in a question earlier, with these warmer temperatures, how is that affecting the colony and its honey consumption? And last year, early inspections on a few hives showed some brood rearing started in late January. If weather stays mild, can I expect the same? And Cheryl, I guess you don't want to answer your own questions, but if you want to, you know,
They go through more food, don't they, when we have warmer temperatures like this, Robert?
I'm not really sure. Mine are still really heavy right now. I'm not close to panicking yet. I know brood rearing normally starts in the middle of January. Last year we had that event in February, which was awful. Hopefully we won't have a repeat. But Jolie, what do you say?
I say I'm eating dinner.
Okay.
You know, I'm not, well, we haven't really looked recently, but I'm not sure brood rearing stopped. It's been so flippin' warm.
Well, that's my other concern, because
I mean, Cecil says it's really slowed down, is what he's saying right now.
they'll go through more food when they're brood rearing, Jolie, and that's my concern if they ever shut down to begin with.
I mean, brood rearing and flying and,
and all of that mess. Yes.
So people really ought to, do some hefting and keep their eyes out, though. They should certainly still be okay right now. So
yeah, they're right. They're okay right now, but
I'd sure look at it in February. And
yeah,
I mean, if it gets cold, I think
the length of days that goes with brood rearing right now.
We can barely hear.
Because he won't speak up. The length of day has more to do with
more
the
impact on it
rearing than really the temperature. So is what he's saying.
The
I
always
hate how we fluctuate in Kansas anyway. One day at 20 and the next day 60. But if it does that in the evening time, I'm better with it than if we have a cold front come through in the middle of the day and drop at 40 degrees.
Yeah. Generally, at the middle of January, they're starting with a very small patch of brood, and it just gets bigger from there. And that has to do with the sun coming back. That's my observation in years past. Let's see. So here's a question from Bill Warnes, and he was asking on recommendation where to buy queens for the spring. So every one of us is going to have a different answer.
But the best answer is watch the weather in Georgia, watch the weather in California, and whoever has the best weather and flying days for queen mating in the spring, that's where you should get them from. Because it's different every year. One year they're great in California, the next year they're awful. One year they're great in Georgia, the next year they might be awful. So it's a crapshoot. I don't know.
That is an excellent question.
Kind of depends on how many queens he wants too. That's yeah. If you're wanting 60 is different than if you want 2.
Right. True.
And what kind? Italians, Carniolans, Saskatchewans. I think that's about it. And mutts. Hope that answered, Bill.
Yeah, tell Bill though one thing. They make sure you get your orders in early, because if you wait till spring, you're never going to be able to get them. So.
Yeah, if you're buying a lot of queens, secure your source.
Right.
So here's next question. This just came in earlier this evening. Jerry Sellers, we are getting ready to put quilt boxes on our hives. Do people recommend putting vent holes in the quilt box? If so, our preferred number or locations where they put the holes. And I'm not sure if people know what quilt boxes look like. I've never used one except on a Warri hive. And so, Jerry, I don't know if you're using the standard Langstroth type colony or a Warwick hive or something else. But this is out of the Dadant catalog, and it's not a cheap piece of equipment. So you'll see the screen bottom in there, and generally you put in cedar chips to help absorb moisture. And the front looks like it's open there on the front, but it has a piece of wood so you can block that off. But there's enough space so that you can put, if you happen to be feeding protein patties or something of that nature. So that's the quilt box. This particular one comes with ventilation holes, so you don't have to do any drilling or, poking holes, and it may depend on, the style that you've got for whatever hive you may have. Are you on, Jerry? Are you using a Worry or a traditional Langstroth?
Yeah, it's a traditional Langstrom hive, and we just built them out of supers.
Okay. Oh, the quilt box?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why we were going to drill our own hole and just use some hardware fabric.
Yeah.
Wire, yeah.
Well, if you want to use this as an example out of the catalog, this looks like they have 2 holes on each side.
It does look like
There's an entrance.
Yeah, it looks like an entrance.
Up above.
And it looks
Yeah.
upside down with the
So-
handholds.
So we read about the entrance up at the top, and some people talk about that. We weren't going to drill one into ours. That one looks like it has one though.
Yeah, I wouldn't put an entrance in the top.
Okay.
I think this has a wooden piece. Looking at it in the catalog, that's removable, and it's so that you can open it up and close it up. But you put in a protein patty of some sort on the top of the frames below the quilt.
Okay.
Screen.
And then the second question, Robert, dealt with, we've read with the quilt boxes, some people line it before they put the shavings in there with a fabric or cloth, just so that if you need to replace the shavings throughout the season, you can just pull out the whole cloth. But does it also?
So it doesn't fall into the.
Yeah, when it, yeah,
If
so
there
it
are
doesn't.
small chips of wood, they say.
Yeah.
So that would be great, but we're worried that it would absorb a lot of the moisture and it might just like then drip back down on them, which we're trying to prevent. So has anybody ever put fabric in theirs?
And anybody can chime in. I don't know of anybody that's used them, so that's why I can't say anything about them.
I think that it's a strategy that's used where the winters are harsher than ours, or a lot longer lasting than ours, and also more humidity. It's the purpose is to absorb that condensation from respiration. And although we occasionally have moisture problems in our hives, it's not really a big problem. And I think it's because we tend to be pretty dry.
Okay.
If
All right. That makes sense, Becky. Okay.
we don't use them. I thought they were really interesting, and I don't think you'll hurt your bees by using them. If that's what I'm going to try this thing. There are a lot of things you can do that it's like, don't do that. That's not good.
We'll try it and report back to everybody.
Well,
Good plan.
It's our first year, so we're trying to do everything.
Really good plan.
Great. Well, I'm glad
Thanks,
that topic
everyone.
came up. Yeah.
I know somebody that used quilt boxes last year, and they said it worked really well, but I've never used them myself. I've got some of them, but I've never used them. So, but
I have one that came with a Warrior hive that I had alive for at least a good 5 or 6 years.
well, I bought a stock of equipment, used equipment and stuff, and there was 4, I think 3 or 4 of them in there.
Did they have any lining in them?
No, they just got
cloth?
the screen in them, and they didn't have anything in them, and they're just empty boxes, and they're homemade. They're just boxes with little pieces of screen over the holes and stuff, the vent holes and stuff. So,
Well, I would think using cloth at least would prevent, some of the wood chips from breaking
that's
apart.
what I think so too.
You don't want to deal with that in the spring.
No.
If you just make sure you've got your hives slightly slanted forward, so any condensation will run down the top of the inner cover down to the front and not onto the cluster of the bees, and make sure you've got adequate ventilation between your inner cover and your lid, which even I use a tongue blade between the inner cover and the upper lid. I don't have any condensation problems, and I've never used one of those.
Yeah, we were thinking of using some shims, door shims.
You can use shims. Some people put a penny or a nickel inside the inner cover. I'd be losing my money all over the ground. You can use popsicle sticks between the inner cover and the lid, and I've never had problems with moisture buildup.
Okay.
Okay, well, that covers all the questions that were sent in earlier. I'm just looking at the chat, starting with Bill Warrens. I think you may be asking for tips for winterizing hives. If anybody would have anything to add for this time of year, I would just say, check once a month. Look to see how big your cluster is, and how heavy they feel. And write it down so that you know what it is the next month. Anybody else?
Mouse guards. We've seen a lot of mice this year. Have no idea whether that's just us or whether they just are really prolific, but make sure you've got mouse guards on, and don't put them on a really cold day without checking to make sure you're not shutting the mouse inside, because they may already be in there and they will make a mess.
Very good. Definitely. I have one bee yard that seems to be more mouse prone than any place else. If I don't put mouse guards on it, then they get in and do a lot of damage.
Cheryl, you don't happen to have one of your pictures that you could pull up really soon, do you?
Not on my computer, but I have some on my phone, or I could send one to Robert. He can do his magic.
Yeah, Cheryl's had a lot of fun with mice already this fall. That
I'm not sure I'm not sure what they are. They're probably woodchucks.
Those are beavers.
I think that they are at the very least like rats. Those are not mice. Those are at least rats.
They're probably from this point forward, I would encourage everyone to just put your hives on cinder blocks of all the colonies I have spread out everywhere. I have no issues with colonies on cinder blocks. But when you get quite a few of them, you don't like lugging around a couple of heavy cinder blocks for every hive you have set out on property. So you kind of put them on pallets or machine pallets, or I even made the hive stands that Diane is it Samataro, am I pronouncing her name right? And those are some of the worst because the box overhangs on the back end and overhangs on the front end. And the little varmints get underneath there and look up and think that's a nice little soft pine edge to chew on. So yeah, it's been really frustrating this year with varmints that
I would like to ask Bob, if I could ask.
Sure.
When they're talking about ventilation, I use shims, but I'm hearing them say to put the shim between the inner cover and the lid. I have been putting this shim between the inner cover and the top of the hive box. Am I putting it in the wrong spot?
For those that use shims, feel free to answer.
Yes.
Becky or Cheryl or Jolie, I don't use shims. I don't use anything really.
We have, and I have used them in the location you're suggesting more in the summertime when I feel like there isn't enough ventilation. In the wintertime, I have usually we put them and not very often do we need them, but between the inner and the outer cover in the wintertime.
I
So
think it blocks more wind in the winter time. And you got to be careful how much you gap because you could be creating an upper entrance. The bees won't necessarily like it. They'll try to propolis it shut where you have your shim located this time of year.
Okay, well, I just
your
never
lid,
had anybody say that to me. So the other thing is, what for the mouse guard, what do you use for, I imagine you're going to tell me some size hardware cloth, but what size hardware cloth do I use?
1/2 inch.
1/2 inch, that's pretty big, isn't it? So the bees can go through that easy.
Yeah.
Can the mice can't go through that?
I buy telescoping. Daydont has telescoping mouse guard, and Man Lake has one that goes all the way across that you can use a entrance reducer at the widest setting behind it if you want to. The telescoping Daydonts, you wouldn't use an entrance reducer behind. It'll take it down to about 6-7 holes.
Okay, well, thank you for those answers. I
But if
appreciate
you
it.
want to use hardware cloth, yeah, I think it's 1/2 inch, isn't it, Becky? That's what Steve
I think
used.
that's what Steve has used before, and that'll work. But he always, it blocks part of the entrance
Yeah.
then with something else and uses the hardware cloth just to make sure that it's that's
just
the mouse
using
guard.
Yeah, he's just using the hardware cloth over that opening in his reducer. He's not spanning it the whole length of the bottom board.
Yeah, that's it. But honestly, the ones that are made commercially are pretty darn cheap. So not a big expense.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Travis Morgan. I believe it's just a comment. He's saying, watching the scholarship kids presentations at the next few meetings will give some great info to new beekeepers. So those will be on our monthly meetings. Our next monthly meeting, and I'm sure we'll repeat this at the close tonight, is next Monday, week from today, 7 o'clock. And it will be by Zoom instead of in Lawrence or a hybrid. So Jerry Sellers has a comment. I read somewhere that brood rearing was daylight dependent. Is that true? Kind of like chickens? Yes. So generally somewhere in January, could be early January depending on the weather, mid-January, you should see some brood. It won't be very big. It might be the size of about a 50-cent piece or so, but you might find some brood then. They'll really start kicking in once they bring in some pollen and nectar, which usually is the maples. And we won't know until we get closer to February when that happens. Well, usually we have a day or two in January where they might pop and bloom for a day, but consistently, it's usually the middle of February, if not later. Anybody else? Talk about brood rearing. Bill Warren's asked what time the beekeeping classes are. Those will be from like basically 9 to 5, starting at 9. Miles Raymond is asking, is anyone selling Buckfast bees anymore? Reference to the queens. Jolie, do you know, are they still selling Buckfast in Texas?
They are, but they are the only queen breeders in Kansas and Texas who swear that Africanized bees are not in their area. And we used to sell Buckfast queens, and they just got hot where they were just nasty. So, and it's been years since we did for that reason. So it only has to be worse now. And the people we know who have gotten them recently have had huge complaints. So I would steer clear.
They must have put their mean bee blinders on.
I know, they just, I don't know.
They're not mean to them.
Like
Sorry.
other
ahead.
beekeepers in Texas did to change their beekeeping lives, but weavers have not done anything different.
So they might still be out there, but the true buckfast hasn't existed for a long
Oh
time.
yeah.
They used to maintain their stock by bringing the semen in from England, and,
Uh-huh.
and routinely did that. And so, as far as the true buckfast bee, I'm not sure it even exists.
I'm sorry, if you could lean in a little bit to the microphone.
Good. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have to speak louder.
Okay, well,
We just heard him barking.
Sorry. Oh, you want Quimby to speak louder? It's almost 8 o'clock. He thinks it's time for his treat.
Dinner time.
Dinner time. No, they had 2 breakfasts this morning. I fed him and then Cecil fed him. Anyway, what Cecil was saying is, can you give him a treat?
yeah.
So
That's bribery.
sorry. Well, when it gets 8 o'clock, they think it's time for their treat. So they just spread each other till they've got us trained. What can I say? Anyway, weavers used to bring in buckfast semen to upgrade the buckfast strain all the time, but the buckfast Abbey hasn't done that in over 20 years, I'd have to say. So
Wow.
you wouldn't be getting a true buckfast.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I haven't seen any. I did see where Blake Shook is selling queens, but he's not calling them Italian and he's not calling them Carnio, and he's calling them hybrids.
Or mutts. I think that's the same thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
Who is it that calls theirs All-American? I just think that's the best name for
Well, that's
think-
one of the weavers too.
Is it?
That was the
Yeah.
same, the buckfast. Yeah,
They're just, that's it, whatever. They're mutts.
All American, just cover it
Yeah.
all.
yeah.
Well, bringing up Blake Shook, so I've seen him. It looks like he's going big on Texas. He's opened 2. They have what they call Texas Bee Supply Store, one close to Dallas, one down in Houston, and one's under construction in Austin. So if you're
Wow.
big on Texas stuff, it's where Texans can get their equipment now. Texas Bee Supply.
Don't buy their cypress, Robert.
Oh, no. I have some Yankees up here I'll get it from. Jerry Sellers, I think, in case I read this, pardon me if I may have already said this, he said they have a Langstroth. They built their own quilt box out of a super. So I mentioned that also. Chris C. is asking, would the broodminder scale be useful in these unseasonably warm conditions to verify how much the bees will have in honey stores? Anybody use a scale? Sorry, Chris. Don't have a good answer for you. I'm not even familiar with the broodminder scale. And we have in our Happy Bee Hour. Yeah. Randall Cass uses a scale where he goes and lifts the behind and takes a weight measurement that way in his colonies up in Iowa. If you ever get a chance to join the Happy Bee Hour. I don't think we have anybody that's familiar with any scales other than just lifting it myself and making a judgment call. I don't believe anybody here uses any scales. So I'll have to look into that broodminder. And then Miles Raymond saying, I haven't used quilt boxes, but he's had good luck with hive wraps. And so Miles, are you online? Can you speak? How many years have you been using the hive wraps? You may not be able to.
Oh, who said his microphone doesn't
Microphone.
work?
Got it. Well, you can put your answer, type it in. You've been using them very many years, 3 years now. And now you're getting them from local, oh, 2 things. Don't cover the entrance. Use a mouse guard though, right? And also put the hive in the shade because it gets too warm. Otherwise, is that the situation? And she has a lady that makes them. They do sell them. I think I saw them in the data catalog online. And yes, he had one that burned up. So if they're in the sun, they may get too warm.
Is Christy on here tonight? Anybody seen Christy Sanderson?
I did not see her, and I'll check here real quick.
She has done some wrapping and kind of says kinds of the same thing, that there are precautions to take when you wrap. One that I thought was interesting, she really feels like they had better brood build up in the spring. Good. Means they ate more food. Maybe not good. Also, you better be prepared for that. And if you aren't in a position where you want to make early splits or deal with excess brood, if you're just like, no, I'm good, I don't want to grow a bunch, probably not a good strategy. She really felt like she had a lot of increased brood from her wrapped hives. So I guess the opposite is true. If you really want to build up in the spring, consider wrapping your hives. But she also said there's a learning curve. She said there's some things to worry about when you're doing wrapping them. But that's, yeah, just from our kind of conversation. Wish she was here.
I think Jim Kelly's used them too, Becky.
Is Jim online?
No, I don't think he is, but he's used them. He always told me to give him a top entrance.
Yeah, I think that's real important with your wrap.
He cuts that front opening. He uses those I think Man Lake has them. They're the cardboard that's like a waxed cardboard. But he makes sure to cut out that opening in the top. But I tell you, our temperatures fluctuate so much. You know, I wouldn't even consider putting them on in a typical year, probably until December.
Yeah, this week we're going to go up to almost 70. You got that thing wrapped in black plastic. Yeah. They're going to be hot, hot, hot.
Yeah, that's the problem. You know, if we were further north, I was looking at them at more of a wind block than anything, because I had some that I didn't have a natural wind block, and I was tired of carrying T-posts and pallets up in the fall to give them, you know, a wind block. And so I was wondering if I could wrap them or do something that would give them enough of a wind protection without having to put those up all the time. But I've since moved those, so it's not a problem. But yeah, I would think they would be a problem with the variations in temperature all the time. Although maybe, I don't know, will they keep it, besides keeping it warmer, would it keep it, I mean, maybe level out the extremes? I don't know.
Well, our real tough weather, it doesn't usually come until January, after the part of December. So we'll see. I would love it if we didn't get too cold, but I don't doubt if that's going to happen.
Well, it'd be a lot easier on your weaker colonies that you should have combined, probably.
Yeah. Well, Miles, he's got a few comments. All the hives with wrap were in the shade, and they were very strong in the spring. He did not use a top entrance for them, and he didn't use any top entrances in the shade, and he just put his on last weekend. And then Jerry Sellers is asking, do we have to worry about providing water in the winter? I would say no, because they're not rearing brood. They'll be when they start rearing broods when they'll need water, and usually that's in February. Anybody else? I know our city code says water, but it doesn't say all year round, but it implies that it's all year round. But preferably, you only need it from February until September or October. But
My neighbor said all mine were down on the pond over the weekend.
wow, that must mean they've got brood.
They were there on the along the shore where there's some algae, around, and they were all puddling on the algae there.
Patrick says he supplies water all year round, and his bees were collecting water a couple days ago. Well, that's possibly, that means they've got brood. That's what it would indicate to me.
Better go buy a lot of sugar.
Joe, you got to change your name. Thanks. Well, here's the picture that Becky sent. I'm sorry, that Cheryl sent me. This is the damage that those little critters were causing to one of her bottom boards. Is this a homemade bottom board or a commercial bot?
That's a Man Lake.
Man Lake.
That's the bottom of the board. Did you show them the other one? It was sitting on a machine pallet.
I say you've got a beaver.
They burrowed underneath, but I could not even see remnants of any type of nest underneath the pallet. They ate all the way through the bottom board. They did not go up into the colony. They didn't even chew into the slatted rack that was above it. So temperatures were in the mid 60s. So I ran home. All I was out trimming, mowing, and doing some last minute stuff I hadn't gotten done. So I didn't have anything with me. So I had to run home for my smoker and equipment, and I separated the boxes and put them up on cinder blocks and gave them a new bottom board. And they're a really heavy colony, and it's about 7 frames of bees all the way across when I separated them.
They love that wood, whatever it is.
Pine, an old soft pine. So yeah, fun. I'm going to be replacing a whole bunch of bottom boards in the spring.
Oh, it wasn't just that one? It was a lot.
I haven't had any more than I'm aware of that they've eaten all the way through. But you remember the other one where they chewed the whole front off. I didn't send that one. The one that I just showed you there is different from the other yard where the whole front end's chewed off. And this was on a hive stand that Diane Samantaro had. This is the one I just sent you just now. That's blue, kind of a purpley blue bottom board. That was on a hive stand. I just sent it to you as a message.
Oh, wow.
And so they went on those kind of boxes, they overhang on the front and the back. And so then they can sit there and chew the underside of everything too. They've been really bad this year. I haven't had this kind of ever.
Just to show everyone what she just sent.
I got them all mowed and trimmed around, but these were already off the ground. These are on a timber. It's like, like a ladder type thing laying on the ground, and you can put 2 side by side, like Diana's, her book. But you have the hive overhanging on both ends, so then they decide to chew the underside on the back.
That's
a
just
great
unbelievable.
That commercial mouse guard too. So
This is a Man Lake. This goes all the way across the whole span, and then over on the far right, you can see I've got you can either turn your entrance reducer up or you can turn it down. Some people like to turn the reducer up because if they get some dead bees, you can have at least a whole layer of dead bees on the bottom, and sometimes it can plug up the entrance and they can't get out. So a lot of people will turn their reducers so that the space is pointed upwards. And they'd just go out that top row of holes instead of the bottom row of holes, but it gives you about 7 or 8 holes for them to go in and out of over there, maybe 6 or 7, maybe. I use the wider entrance and then use it in conjunction. The telescoping day daunts, you don't need to use an entrance reducer on at all. So
Yeah.
I got a picture of one of those too.
Dwayne is saying,
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, have you
go
had
ahead.
pack rats, Cheryl? Because honestly,
Yeah,
that
I mean, I've had pack rats on our property before, but my property is not where I'm having the problem. But I also have a couple of feral cats that keep busy and probably are helping with those issues here. These are on 2 different other yards. So
2 different yards?
This is a different yard. This is a yard down south of my house. And then the other one I showed you is east in Douglas County.
Cheryl, is that board you got it setting on like a 4x4 or 6x6 or what is that?
It's a 2x8. Is it 2x18?
8. Okay. And this is awful high for mice to be up there, especially as chewing.
I know.
And I don't think a pack crack would even be reached that. Maybe it's just really weird. I mean, I wonder if you've got. I wonder if there's something on the board, you know, that some sugar or something like that, or something that would maybe get a squirrel.
They're chewing on the perimeters of all edges of the board.
Well, that's weird.
Even on the backside.
Because it's
at
like
both yards. At both yards, they're just nibbling to be nibbling.
Yeah,
I've
but
never seen it that bad.
I know.
It's strange. It really is. I've never seen it that bad.
I've got everything mowed around it now, so it's wide open, so they don't even, that's probably going to help. I've got the weed whip and everything. It's been cleaned all the way around, so. And like I said, the one that ate all the way through didn't even mess with the colony. Robert, the one I sent you just now is the one I fixed after the whole bottom board was ate off of it. And then it's got a day daunt mouse guard on it. So if you wanted to show them, then you don't have to use entrance reducers behind them.
Well, that's what I'm agreeing with Barbara Flick. I mean, I think it looks like squirrels chewing or something like that. And I don't know why they would be.
I mean, just short of putting trail cams on them.
There you go. Put trail cams on. Figure out what these critters are.
I haven't used that trail cam in so long.
Yeah, get out the trail cam and they must be making some delicious wood.
I don't know.
You didn't. My dad used to put that. This wouldn't be good for bees, but I remember my dad used to put that real sticky stuff in a band around the old elms to catch the bugs as they crawled up the trunk. I'd have all my bees stuck in the stuff.
What's that called? That tacky stuff.
Slather it with something, but it would hurt the bees is the problem. Make it not so tasty.
You sent this other picture. What's it about?
It's just it's after I put a new bottom board on it, and it's
okay.
That's the one that had the entire hole ate out of the bottom board. So I had to run home, get a new bottom board, and I put it up on cinder blocks. That just shows you a day daunt mouse guard.
Okay. So that's the replacement bottom board.
You can see they were chewing the bottom that I decided to, this one, I didn't want them to chew through it again. So I was using the man-like mouse guard like as a metal edging so they couldn't chew on it. See how I have 2 of them on there? Mm-hmm. One for the entrance, which is a day daunt, and then the man lake. Yeah, I'm going to have to start wrapping them in steel, I guess, in the winter. It's crazy.
Okay.
So get you a good farm cat too when you keep bees.
And don't leave them trapped inside like Stormy.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie has been around those hives, and so I think he's been mousing. So I haven't had any problems in the backyard.
Good.
Anyway, I think the pack rats, I don't know that they really, I don't know. Colony was okay, so.
Let's see. Well, we're close to the top of the hour. Where did my promotion go? So our next event, of course, I mentioned earlier, it's a week from today. It's just the monthly meeting. Cheryl, I forgot the topics.
Oh, for the monthly?
Mm-hmm.
We have a guest speaker, and it's a Zoom only. And
Matthew
I'm
Brandis.
gonna pull it up. Monitoring bees in cold weather, presented by John Benham, and he's a EAS master beekeeper from Kentucky, and has let's see, and is a full-time beekeeper for 20 plus years, operating 40 plus colonies. And then Jolie, are we going to have youth scholarship presentations from all three of those, or do you know
Yep.
who? Okay.
Yeah.
Grace Morgan, Kylie Barlett, and Daniel. Pronounce his last name.
I don't know. Klingel, something like that. And Grace's sister's going to give a little presentation too. They each started a hive this year.
Cool. So that's next Monday, the 13th.
And those should be very entertaining. They're always great to see the younger people making a presentation. And then Thursday of the same week, on the 16th, 7 o'clock, that's when we have our Kansas Honey Producers Value Added presentation, and that's the holiday gift cookies. And any details on that, Jolie?
I can tell you what we're going to have, but I haven't contacted people to see that they'll do them. So lip balm, beeswax wraps, gift baskets. If anyone's done the vodka with their cappings, that's one I'd like to do. And I forget what the other one I thought of. Oh, Christy's going to do just infusing with cinnamon sticks, and she does that wonderful pecans and honey. So she was going to talk about those two things because they're so easy to do. So
great. And so that's all I have. Does anybody have anything they haven't brought up yet that they want to get answered fairly quickly?
well, someone brought up about putting in the protein patties, and I would advise against that this time of year. They're not raisin brood, and it's really just food for small hive beetles. So I don't know. I don't know what do you guys think?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the patties this time of year. They are not raising brood, and that's what they need it for. The protein is for making worker jelly to feed to the brood.
Cheryl recommended a Zoom program this last week, and it was the woman who spoke was out of Juliana Rangel's lab in Texas, and I cannot remember her name. Cheryl, if you remember it, please join in. This is like one of those things that I said, every time I watch something like that, I learned something new. And here's what I learned from her. She was just knock it out of the park good. And that is that small hive beetles can carry viruses to our bees. So they, in the same way that other, kind of in the same way that varroa mites carry viruses, except they're not biting the bees. They carry the viruses from hive to hive into the hive. So another reason to control small hive beetle. So pollen patties this time of year, not a good one. Yeah.
Alexandria Payne, PhD
She was
candidate at Texas A&M University Bee Lab.
Yeah,
I think they determined that small hive beetle actually carry sac brood virus.
Ooh,
And they
And-
were doing some studies on ants as well as small hive beetle being vector of viruses that the bees already have in the colony from the varroa.
Yeah.
That they can
But
pass
one-
because
one
they're
more way.
getting fed. You know how they get fed by the bees. So if you had an infected bee and feeding, passing it.
and
they
ants that we've
pass it
all
on.
thought were just an annoyance in the hive, that particularly if the hive dies because of high viral load, the ants will leave the hive, go to a new hive, and spread virus.
wow.
It was well worth watching, and it was a Zoom done for Auburn University. Yeah, that's her little
Cheryl's
diagram.
showing that.
It was worth the time to watch. I think.
Correct virus transmission or something, and she was talking about different.
It's recorded, so anybody can see it. It's a
Yeah.
great.
No, it's the one I sent you a link on too.
Really worth seeing, and she was fantastic speaker. Well, I hope we can get her up here in Kansas sometime because she did a really nice job. So anyway, that was a long way around. I concur. No pollen patties now for our bees. It's just not a good option.
Be a waste of money.
Yeah.
Once the real stuff gets here in February, they won't pay it any mind.
And
Yeah.
if you have them on, take them off.
Yeah.
Stick them in the freezer.
Some people try to feed dry pollen, open feed dry pollen. You won't have the robbing like you will with feeding honey or syrup or something communal. But they'll take it maybe for a couple weeks there in late January or February, and then why are you feeding? Why are you giving them pollen? Are you wanting to stimulate brood rearing early because you're going to make splits? Or once the natural stuff starts coming in, they'll ignore that stuff anyway.
Sign up early for the class.
Very
Get
good.
your numbers in. We can count you for lunch. That would be the thing. So
I can say we probably have at least 10 people signed up already. So
woohoo! Very good.
And notebooks.
Yes.
Yeah,
thank
so
you everybody for joining. Monthly meeting in a week. I will miss out. I'll be on a cruise, so I will see you all next year. So happy New Year.
Well, while you're gone, we're going to enjoy 70-some degrey weather here.
Don't tease me like that. So anyway, enjoy the 70-degree weather.
Hey, Cheryl, this is
Yes.
Marty.
Yes.
I'll volunteer to help you guys with the classes too, whatever you need help with. So whoever's controlling that, running that, I just want to let you guys know.
Yeah, that's Becky.
Becky, okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't remember who was doing what, and I'm sorry.
No, that's
Anyway.
fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Becky, that's what I'm saying, okay?
Well, great. Well, thanks everyone. Stay warm for
All
5
right.
days.
See you
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining.